that Senator Casey has come to hear what our issues are and to talk with us.
Yes.
So, with no further ado, then I'd like to turn it over to Senator Casey and hear what he has to say.
Sure. I'm going to start very formally. Madam Chair, Commissioner,
Welcome.
and Bob Doherty's much younger brother. Bob and I worked together in a campaign 32 years ago. He was in kindergarten. He's quite a bit older. No, but let me first of all thank you for being here today. I know that you normally don't spend part of your Saturday in a small room crowded together just waiting to hear a speech. So I know that's not what you do every Saturday. The reason you're here today, the reason all of us are here today, is because you care about your country. And you know that we're not headed in the right direction. For a number of reasons, but principally because you've got one party rule in Washington that's taking us in that wrong direction. Now, we can sit around and complain about that, or we can do what you're doing today, which is to be active, to be engaged, and to be focused on winning this election. So I'm especially grateful in a personal way, but in a much larger sense, I'm grateful for what you're doing because of what you're doing for your country. And, of course, our Commonwealth. This is a big year for our state as well. And we got a lot of battles to fight. I'll focus more on the national battles, the battles in Washington. One battle, as your chair just told us, is the battle on health care. And that battle goes on. I realize it was a good day when the United States Senate said no to the horrific repeal bill that we were voting on last summer. That was a good day. It was not only a good day for the country and our Commonwealth, it was a good day for this county, because more than 7,000 people just in this county got health care through the Affordable Care Act. 70% of the 7,000 got their health care through Medicaid expansion. The Republican Party wasn't just trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act and make those changes and undermine Medicaid. They were trying to eliminate Medicaid expansion over time. That's a bad idea. It's a bad idea in terms of people's coverage. It's a bad idea if you live in a community, like every community I can think of, that has an opioid or an addiction crisis, because Medicaid expansion provides treatment and services for that. So what they've tried to do to health care is inexcusable. And when it comes to their attacks on health care, whether it's the current Republican effort to end protections for pre-existing conditions, why would they be in a court of law arguing against that on a constitutional basis? So whether it's that, or whether it's decimating Medicaid, or cutting health care like they want to do, for example, trying to cut Medicare by $537 billion, that's what the House Republican budget was just a couple of months ago when they voted on it in June. When they're doing all that, we're not going to sit down and talk to them about it. We're not going to negotiate how to cut health care. We're going to do one thing. We're going to stop them from doing it.
Yes.
If I do nothing else for the rest of my life, I'm going to stop them from these health care cuts. We have to be united on that, not as Democrats versus Republicans. We got to be united as Americans, because this is a great country. We're the greatest country in the world in terms of our military and our economy. That's great. We appreciate that. But we're also a great country because we've learned over time how to help people, how to take care of people. So with a child who has a disability, we want to make sure that child who has Medicaid today will always have it. When a senior needs to get into a nursing home and they need Medicaid to help them get there, we want to make sure that Medicaid is there for them. And when a family needs health care, whether they live in a rural part of Indiana County or whether they live in a big city, we want to make sure that health care is there for them. So we got a big battle to fight on health care, and that's a battle we are going to win together as Americans. Another battle we got to fight is the battle, obviously, to create jobs and lift wages. Now, Republicans told us They kept saying when they were ramming through their tax bill, now this is one of those issues where they were successful. They actually got a bill passed in December of 2017. We should all boo now because it was a bad bill. If you're in the top 1%, congratulations, you did really well in that bill. But I think what we should have done, and what Democrats should stand for, is not just a tax cut for the middle class, but a bigger tax cut. And guess what? That tax cut can get bigger, much bigger, if we say to the top 1%, congratulations, you've done well. You have doubled your share of national income since Ronald Reagan. So you've been on like a several decade high. You're doing pretty well, Mr. or Mrs. Top 1%. It's time to help the middle class with a much bigger tax cut than they're getting in this bill. And instead of giving away the store to big corporations and running up debt to do it, we're gonna have a new agenda that says corporations can get a tax cut. That's right, we can help them, but we can also do it in a fiscally responsible way. So you don't have to do what the Republicans are doing. They run up $1.5 trillion at least. Some people think it's $2 trillion of debt, and then they turn around and say, "Oh my goodness, now we have to cut Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security." That's another thing where when they go at those programs, because they've ran up debt, we're going to fight them on it, and we're going to defeat them on that issue going forward. We have too many other battles to list today or to get into, but we know we have a battle on basic rights. Who would ever believe that we'd be fighting about voting rights all these years later? But when you get an administration like this in a Supreme Court, whether it's voting rights or civil rights, whether it's the environment or the protection for workers, I mean, I just can't believe that we're even talking about the right to organize being threatened. But now we know from the Janus case, we know from the Kavanaugh hearings, that the right to organize is at risk in this Supreme Court fight and also from the Republican Congress. So we got a lot of other battles to fight, but I think in the end, when you consider what we're up against as a people and as a society, we've got to remember some basic issues. This isn't just about being a Democrat, but of course Democrats are at our best when we're talking about and fighting for justice. St. Augustine said a long time ago, many, many hundreds of years ago, he said, "Without justice, what are kingdoms but great bands of robbers?" Now, all those years ago, they used to refer to these institutions as kingdoms. Now we call them governments. We've got a federal government now controlled by one party. It's one party rule. And you bet there's some robbers. They're trying to rob people of their health care. They're trying to rob us of a clean environment in a state that has a constitutional provision, Article 1, Section 27 of the state constitution, that guarantees that the people shall have a right to clean air, to pure water, and to the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. That's who we are as a commonwealth, as a state. They're trying to rob people of their opportunity to get ahead, to get into the middle class, or to stay in the middle class, because they won't give them a tax break, because they're too busy giving it to that person at the top. So you bet there's some robbers today. And we have to stop those robbers in their tracks. The best way to do that is to win. Win an election. We have 59 days. And we are just getting warmed up to make sure we win this race, but also to re-elect Governor Tom Wolf, and to elect and re-elect candidates across the border. But I want you to know something, or across the board, I should say. I want you to know something. We can make history in a couple different ways this year. One way that I believe the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania will not just lead the way of winning a lot of races and not just help us take back the United States House of Representatives. We can make history on a single night. We will elect more women. More women will be elected presented to our state congressional delegation in one night than cumulatively over 50 years. Damn good. And we've got a lot of people running for state house and state senate. They're running in sometimes in blue districts, sometimes in purple districts, sometimes in very red districts. Whether they win or whether they lose, we're all going to be better off.
Yes.
Because if they win, we'll have a vote. We'll have someone to stand up for us. If they lose a close race, or if they're in a very red district and they lose a tough race, they're going to be ready to run another day for another. I don't want to put any pressure on the Indiana County, but we've got history to make and we've got miles to go before we rest. And I'm just so grateful that you're willing to help us. Commissioner, I want to thank you for your leadership in a tough job. But I'm really grateful you're here. And I know that if I asked you to come back here next Saturday night, you'd be here. But I don't know where you're going to be next Saturday night. I'm damn glad you're here this Saturday night.